and police discovered fingerprints on a bowl of pineapple left in the family's dining room on the morning of the murder.
I didn't put the bowl there, okay? I did not put the bowl there. I would not do this, set it like this.
If those prints belong to one of the two of you.
They did? You sure?
Let me ask you a question. Are Burke's fingerprints on the bowl of pineapple? Do we know for sure that he was eating pineapple as well? This is an important question and one we must be careful to answer before jumping to any conclusions about Burke.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Now, as you know, I don't think the crime happened in the kitchen, and I don't think there was an argument leading to murder over a piece of pineapple. But if you do, you better believe there's strong evidence linking your perpetrator to the evidence. Now, interestingly, I was casually looking online for coverage for information for evidence of Burke's fingerprints, and I found this reference on Wikipedia. Let's go through it. The Case of JonBenet Ramsey, a show broadcast on CBS on September 18 and 19, 2016, that was close to the 20-year anniversary, used a group of experts to evaluate the evidence. The group theorized that Burke hit his sister in the head with a heavy object after she stole a piece of pineapple. And then there's the number 76, which is a hyperlink to the source that Wikipedia has used. If you blow up link 76, it takes you to an article from CBS. And if you go to the article, you'll find references to the pineapple, to the bowl, and to Patsy's fingerprints. What you won't find in the article Wikipedia have cited is a single reference to Burke. Burke's name is mentioned nowhere in the article. Now, I can't prove this, but I suspect there was a reference to Burke and his fingerprints, and that reference has since been scrubbed. Now, you might say, why? Why on earth would they do that? Well, you couldn't blame CBS if they did that, seeing as though they were facing a $750 million lawsuit. That's $750 million lawsuit for making the claims against Burke they were making. And if CBS felt they needed to be careful, my advice, you might want to follow their lead as well. Having said that, aren't you curious to see how Burke himself responded when asked about the pineapple? And I don't mean as an 11 or 12-year-old, I mean as an adult on Dr. Phil. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind, if you're finding this whole PINEAPPLEGATE narrative interesting, we're also going to look at how John dealt with the questions regarding this. You're not going to believe what he said in terms of that. And then we're going to take it even further. I want to deal with something that I didn't mention in my analysis of Kolo's theory. That is also going to blow your socks off, so look out for that. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started.
I didn't put the bowl there, okay? I did not put the bowl there. I would not do this, set it like this.
If those prints belong to one of the two of you.
They did? You sure?
So let me ask you a question. Do you believe Patsy when she says, I didn't put the bowl there? Do you believe her? Now, it's possible that she's telling the truth, that she prepared the meal, that she put the pineapple in the bowl, and then someone else picked up the bowl and carried it somewhere else. So you could say that it's true that she didn't put the bowl there. But was Patsy present when all of this was Patsy involved in preparing the meal? And I think logic tells you that it makes sense that she would. It makes sense that she did. And besides making sense, her fingerprints are on the bowl. So that seems to suggest she was part of that whole thing, right?
I didn't put the bowl there, okay? I did not put the bowl there. I would not do this, set it like this.
If those prints belong to one of the two of you.
They did? You sure?
Now, what's very interesting to notice and to contrast is the mismatch in Patsy's indignation. Look at her body language, listen to the pitch of her voice. I didn't do that, right? And then the officer tells her, well, we found your fingerprints on the bowl and they matched yours. And Patsy's totally different. She's leaning forward. She's speaking a lot more. She's speaking more softly. She's got a much more guarded tone, and she's somewhat defensive.
Prints belong to one of the two of you.
They did? You sure?
Do you notice how much softer Patsy's tone is when addressing Officer Haney when she says, they do? You're sure? And what can she say about evidence like that? Not much. So again, you've got to ask, do you believe Patsy when she denies that she did this? Because she's also strenuously denied writing the ransom note. Now, it's one thing to strenuously deny something. Can you still deny it if there's proof that you've done something? Then just how strenuous is that denial?
Prints on the bowl are Patsy's, according to police, suggesting that she's the one who gave the fruit to her daughter. But if Patsy did give it to John Bonet and is lying about it, then investigators wondered, could she be lying about everything?
And that is why it's so important to carefully, cautiously, systematically examine other interviews, other statements that Patsy gave and look for additional inconsistencies. And it's also so important to go through, for example, that interview she gave to Larry King and deal with her and try and get a sense of the veracity or indeed lack of in her statements. And we haven't completed that process. We've only gone through about a quarter of part 1 of part 2 of Patsy's interview with Larry King. The second part is even more astonishing when Detective Steve Thomas is present, one of the biggest accusers of Patsy Ramsey is right there, and he accuses her directly to her face. How does she respond? But of course, in terms of Pineapplegate, Patsy's only one half of the equation. The other half is Burke. How does Burke respond to questions about the pineapple? Well, let's take a look.
Did you and she eat pineapple together at any time during the day?
Maybe. I don't remember specifically eating pineapple, but very well could have. Would you remember eating pineapple 20 years ago?
Now, one of the main differences between Burke talking about this, and it's a very serious area, it's an area where certainly one detective is saying, this is proof, this is evidence that Burke is the perpetrator. He's smiling, he's laughing about it. And yet when Patsy is confronted with this information, she's very serious and also very indignant. Why isn't Burke? Something else to consider here is that Burke seems to make a valid point when he says, would you remember eating pineapple 20 years ago? Right? Makes sense, right? Except if there was a photo, of that bowl and what was in it, and photos that are reminding you of that seminal, fateful Christmas, a Christmas that ought to be burned in your memory, wouldn't that jog your memory? I think it would. And it does seem common cause that his fingerprints were at least on the glass that had iced tea in it.
But what was more interesting was that next to that bowl there was a glass of tea, and on that glass of tea was Burke's fingerprints.
So do you see, the fingerprints are telling one story, and both of the Ramseys seem to be telling another story, which is either that they didn't touch these objects, or they didn't consume what was in them, or that they didn't remember. But the fingerprints certainly do remember. And so I think Pineapplegate also exposes the proponents of the intruder theory in ways that are often underappreciated. Now you might say the intruder theory makes sense, but can you stretch that theory over literally every question in this case? For example, you might believe what the Ramseys say about certain things, putting John Bonet to bed and forgetting about the broken window, but can you believe them when they say the pineapple wasn't theirs? And the bowl wasn't theirs either, especially when the fingerprints are on them. I mean, isn't that getting a little far-fetched? I mean, Burke seemed to recognize the bowl when shown a photograph by Dan Schuller. in that sort of setting when he was a little boy. He didn't say, I don't know what I'm looking at. You kind of got the sense that he knew what he was looking at and he'd been caught out in some way. Now, according to Steve Thomas's book, with his legs pulled up and his chin on his knees, Burke said he played some Nintendo on the afternoon of December 25th. When showed a photograph of the pineapple and bowl, he recognized the bowl. That showed it belonged in the house and was not brought in by an intruder. Now, can you believe it? That was part of the sort of response, the defense of the Ramseys about this whole pineapple aspect, that the intruder brought it with him. But then the issue became, didn't JonBenet eat the pineapple before going out to dinner? Or couldn't she have eaten the pineapple somewhere else? But let's be clear what we're talking about. There is a bowl of pineapple inside the Ramsey home, right out there, and the autopsy shows one of the last things JonBenet did was eat pineapple. Let me be explicit about that. Let me repeat that. The autopsy shows one of the last things JonBenet did was eat pineapple. But now we're asked to go somewhere else for where she ate it. The logical inference, considering all the evidence, is that JonBenet ate pineapple and did so after returning home from the Whites, the Fernies, and the Steins. Now, I'm the first person to say, the rate of digestion isn't an exact science, but one can say, obviously, if food is low down in the digestive tract, then it is a sign that a lot of time has gone by after eating, and the higher up it is a sign that less time has gone by. Now, in just the same way, the logical inference when we look at the circumstances of this case isn't that an intruder came into the house and behaved irrationally and committed an irrational crime and forgot to leave any traces of himself anywhere. So I don't think you can take the evidence and give an irrational spiel on literally all of it. You can't have the intruder theory suddenly deal with all the irrationalities under the umbrella of irrationality. I mean, compared to another scenario that has more logical explanations, for example, the pineapple and the bowl. Is it more likely that an intruder brought the pineapple in and the intruder fed it to JonBenet, or is it more likely that the pineapple came from inside the home and the Ramseys were involved in preparing it and consuming it? Now let's go back to Patsy's reaction.
I didn't put the bowl there, okay? I did not put the bowl there. I would not do this setup like this.
So Patsy is denying putting the bowl or the tea there, but again, her fingerprints were found on one or both items. So how believable is Patsy now?
Those prints belong to one of the two of you.
They did? You sure?
If we go back to the transcript and we go even further into it, Tom Haney says, and you'd said earlier you'd cleaned off the table after breakfast. Patsy, I cleaned off the table. Tom Haney. So that wasn't there. Patsy, No, I've not seen that. Patsy, I did not feed JonBenet pineapple. Patsy, so I don't know how it got in her stomach. Patsy, and I don't know where this bowl of pineapple came from. Patsy, I can't recall putting it there. And then in terms of this documentary from 2006, JonBenet, Anatomy of a Cold Case, directed by Lawrence Schiller for Court TV, the voiceover goes, kept from the public until now is the fact that a glass containing a tea bag was photographed next to the bowl of pineapple. How did it get there? And was the tea and pineapple consumed at the same time? Patsy, but I did not do this. If she ate that, somebody put that there. Patsy continues, I can never recall putting a tea bag like that in a cup, okay? So I don't know what the answer is. And then the voiceover in terms of the documentary continues, according to police files, none of the Ramseys' friends or any member of the Ramsey family had any idea who prepared or served the tea. During the investigation, the crime lab found Patsy and her 10-year-old son Burke's fingerprints on the bowl and Burke's on the glass of tea, adding to the mystery. Henry Lee, the forensic scientist, said, another area I'm always curious about is whether DNA on the glass and on the bowl, and particular the spoon, not only the eating area but also the handle, but according to the investigators, no DNA tests have ever been conducted on the spoon, bowl, or glass. Now, what I find really interesting about this is, can you see how the DNA narrative here is completely superfluous? Sure, it would be nice to have DNA, but what do you have? You have fingerprints. You have photographic evidence. You have autopsy evidence. Oh, but you want something more than that. Now you want DNA evidence. I have a suggestion. Let's see if we can trace the pineapple back to its source. In other words, where was the pineapple? Where did that come from? And we'll do that through John's response to PINEAPPLEGATE, where we'll also examine who he says gave JonBenet the pineapple and how it got there. Spoiler alert, you're not going to want to miss this, and you're not going to believe this. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.